So in this video, I'm continuing my personal finance journey by first of all working out what my updated hourly wage is now that I am a fully qualified lawyer working in London. And I'm then going to start equating the number of hours that I work to my spending so that everything I spend money on effectively has a cost in terms of hours worked. So in terms of where this video fits into my overall personal finance journey, I first of all worked out my net worth. So go watch that video to get started, effectively working out what my assets and liabilities are right now so that I know where I'm starting from. And I've then also worked out my monthly spending so that I have a really clear picture on what I'm prioritizing in terms of what I'm spending my money on every month. And in this video, I'm applying a technique that I picked up in a book called Your Money or Your Life, where you effectively equate money to life energy. You have to expend your life in order to earn money in a job. And so really equating what you're spending your money on to that life energy, to your time, to your life, is a hugely powerful way to really prioritize your buying decisions and work out, is what I'm spending my money on really worth it? So I'm gonna head downstairs and start working out what Vicky Robin in her book calls my real hourly wage. And I'm gonna show you how to work out yours too. And then we will equate that to some of my spending. Alrighty. So let's work out our real hourly wage. So what is your real hourly wage? It's effectively your hourly wage, but just take into account a number of considerations like the fact that you have to pay tax before you actually see your salary, the amount of time you have to spend, for example, commuting to work, and also additional expenses involved in doing your job. Stuff like the cost of getting loads of takeaways because you're always working late. So first of all, start off with your post-tax salary. So we want to take off from our gross salary all of the income tax, national insurance contributions, any other tax that you have to pay. I, for example, have student loans and I subtract those from my gross salary to get my monthly net salary. This is an absolutely critical stage and one that I think people often don't factor in mentally when they're thinking about how much they earn and how much they're spending. The reality is that actually for every £1 you spend, you really need to earn around £1.50, or at least that's around the rate based on my current tax rate. So for me, looking at my payslip for this month, my basic pay is £10,400. I then make a pension contribution, which I'm not going to include in my real wage because it kind of goes out and I don't ever think about it, of £400. I then have income tax at £3,200, national insurance contributions nearly £500, student loan contributions nearly £700, and medical insurance costs of £136. After all of those subtractions, I'm left with net pay of £5,477.15. Step 2 is then to treat that income as though you're a business. So I then subtract from that any additional expenses I have associated with doing my job, so stuff like commuting or buying work outfits. For me, that means the cost of commuting to work, £50 a month. And the reason that number is so low is because I live in a very expensive part of London that's very close to my office. So I'm going to say that I have to pay an extra £300 a month in order to live close to my office. I then have a few other associated expenses that I've calculated based on working long hours. So number one is ironing my shirts, which I have to wear to work, £40 a month, and also additional costs on takeaways, because when I've got to the end of a long week, I generally always order a takeaway on a Friday, which I probably wouldn't do if I didn't work such long hours. So I'm going to call that £100 a month. That brings my adjusted net pay to just under £5,000 a month. Step 3 is then to work out the number of hours you work in a week. So I'm going to say that I work an average of 9:30 a.m. till 8:30 p.m. every day with 1 hour for lunch. So that's 10 hours worked a day, 50 hours a week. And step 4 is then to add on to that the number of hours you spend commuting each week or doing other work related stuff. So I'm going to call that 3 hours between commuting and occasionally checking my emails, bringing my total hours associated with my job to 53 hours a week. And then the last step is just to do a little bit of maths to work out what my hourly wage actually is. So I'm going to take my 53 hours a week that I work, multiply that by the number of weeks I work in a year. So that's 52 weeks, and I get 5 weeks of holiday a year. So I'm going to subtract that down to 47. 53 times 47 gives you the number of hours I work in a year. I then divide that by 12 to get the number of hours I work in a month, which comes to 207.58. I then divide my around £5,000 monthly salary by the number of hours I work in a month to get my hourly wage of just over £24 an hour. Now, before I go on to equate the number of hours that I'm having to work in order to pay for some of the stuff I spend my money on, I want to really quickly tell you about today's sponsor, because I know that money can be a huge source of anxiety for people, and one of the ways that I've personally dealt with anxiety is using BetterHelp. I've spoken in the past pretty openly about how I really struggled in my second year of university, putting tons of pressure on myself to study all the time, comparing myself to others, and making myself so anxious that I developed IBS. At that time, speaking to a therapist massively helped me, and now I've begun regular therapy using BetterHelp as a preventative tool to look after my mental health. Talking to a therapist when I feel like I want to about any anxieties I have or ways that I can reduce stress. BetterHelp's onboarding assesses your needs and matches you with your own professional therapist. They have a very broad range of expertise within their therapist network, with over 20,000 therapists currently on the platform. You can use the time with your therapist as suits you, scheduling weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly sessions as you want, and you can message your therapist at any time. It's more affordable than traditional offline therapy and so much more convenient. So yeah, you can visit betterhelp.com/Liam Porritt. That's better, HELP/Liam Porritt, through the link at the top of the description to join over 2 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. Plus, you'll get 10% off your first month. Alrighty, so we now know my hourly wage is £24.03 an hour, and I want to start equating that to some of the stuff I spend my money on. So in my monthly spending video, which you should of course go and watch, I found that I spent a total of £300 a month on eating out. And over the last couple of weeks, I've been on a couple of pretty luxy meals with Beth because I kind of consider myself to be doing pretty well, and that's something I should be able to afford. And the other day, I spent a total of just shy of £200 on a meal for the two of us. That is a lot of money, and an amount of money that student Liam or trainee Liam even would have been like, oh my goodness, what are you doing? And I've got to say, now that I know that it takes me 8 hours of work, that's like a whole day's work, in order to pay for one meal, I don't regret doing that as a special treat, but I think it's a habit I'm definitely gonna want to avoid doing. I just don't think that a day of my life is worth one nice meal, at least not on a regular basis. So definitely a helpful exercise to hopefully snap me a little bit out of spending quite so much money on meals. Aside from that, the other big expense that this has really made me think about is how much money I spend on travel. So I didn't cover that in my spending video because it's not a regular monthly expense, which overall I think, as I said in that video, although some of the people in the comments disagreed, I think I am pretty frugal on. Travel, on the other hand, not so frugal. You know, I go away fairly infrequently, and when I do, I like to do that in some style. And that means that, for example, when Beth and I went to go and visit our wedding venue back in April, I spent £350 on one night at a hotel, which was crazy. I don't think I've ever spent that much on one night at a hotel before, and it was very, very nice. Do I regret it? Probably not. But do I think, again, that if I were to go away for 5 nights and I were to spend £300 a night, £1,500 on a hotel, actually, when I do the maths, that then equates to 63 hours of my time, like over a week's work. Do I think that's worth it? Possibly not. So look, obviously I'm incredibly privileged. I have a very high salary, and the numbers I'm talking about here may be seen to you like completely ridiculous, and to me they would have seemed very high even 6 months ago. I think the thing is, your lifestyle adjusts to your earnings very, very quickly, and that is exactly what this exercise is kind of designed to combat. No matter where your earnings are currently, working out your real terms hourly wage allows you to equate what you could spend your money on to the hours of your life you have to expend in order to buy that thing. So this isn't about not buying the stuff that actually makes you happy. It's about asking, does that make me happy enough to warrant me spending 10 hours of my life to buy it? So yeah, go and work out right now what your real hourly wage is. Drop it down in the comments if you feel like being as transparent as I've been in this video. Also, feel free not to if you don't feel comfortable. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, please, and then go and watch one of my other personal finance videos. And I look forward to speaking again very, very soon.